What's up, family? Tristan Talks family. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about three things that intertwine: media, propaganda, and politics. Everyone's favorite three trifecta, the Three Musketeers. So, media. Media, let's do just a Webster's definition of media. Let's look it up real quick. I don't want to get any wrong. The main means of mass communication. So, the first forms of media in America was newspapers, which came out in 1704. Then we had Morse code during the Civil War to communicate through different soldiers so they wouldn't encrypt their messages or whatever. And then we had the telephone and then radio. Telephone in 1876. Radio in 1895, and television was mass produced between 1926 and 1939. Television was created before then, but everyone had a television during that time period. So, while they used media to highlight what was going on, they used newspapers to highlight the Plessy v. Ferguson case, 1896, to the separate but equal doctrine. Everyone knows about that. Morse code during the Civil War and stuff like that. Radio to highlight Gaines versus Canada, and then the television Brown versus Ford, which was in 1954. Gaines was kind of 1939. So let's talk about movies at the time, though. So movies and politics, propaganda, all intertwined. So the first box office breaking movie. Everyone loved this movie. That's what the box office means. The Birth of a Nation. And I know everyone knows about The Birth of the Nation. If you don't, let's do a little background check. What? So, it's basically a Civil War movie. It was talking about they found the Ku Klux Klan, basically. And they're talking about, what it is, I'm not going to get into it, but it was a racist movie. So this movie they're trying to portray, the rise of black folks in America. So after the Civil War, we had this thing called Reconstruction. Reconstruction was basically for black folks, for freed people to get back on their feet. We had these programs like the Freedmen's Bureau that gave black folks housing down the strip of South Carolina, on the beaches. The housing was eventually took away by President Andrew Johnson, it was eventually took away. These freed people wanted three things when they got freed from slavery: family, education, and land. They did not understand, they did not see them as freedom if they did not have those three things. So the family, black folks, freed people at the time, wanted to reconnect with their family. That's why we have more black people moving up to the north. Not the Great Migration, but they were moving up to the north because a lot of freed people before the Emancipation Proclamation moved up to the north to find their families. Education. They created HBCUs at the time. The Freedmen's Bureau created HBCUs to teach black folks how to become teachers. So that's the form of education. There's this quote, is if you did not know how to read a book, you were still enslaved. Third is land. Land is because they can do whatever they want on their land. That's the idea of freedom. But there were these slight tidbits of still slavery. They still tried to enslave us, not by chains and cotton picking, but enslaved of the mind. They substituted cotton picking with sharecropping. It's the same thing, but they're getting paid for it. And they're not even getting paid. They're getting paid pennies, let's be real. They're getting paid for it. And so keep that in mind as I keep talking. But The Birth of the Nation, it was basically telling white folks that This movie is the rise of black people and what we should do with them and how we should handle black people. You know, and it was and I think I think to keep this in mind, it was the first groundbreaking film to promote racism. Let's be real. But the Birth of the Nation was like it created this idea of mass hysteria. It's just basically uncontrollable fear. So think about this: white folks watching this movie in the movie theater, this 3 hour movie. They come out of the movie theater and they see a black man minding his business, tall black man. How do you think they're gonna feel after they get done watching a movie? It's the same way how are you gonna feel after you get done watching The Notebook. You're gonna feel sad. Same thing with Birth of the Nation. You're going to feel fear when you see these black folks. That's that mass hysteria they were trying to instill into the white folks to condemn their violence, to support their violence. It kind of pitched the idea that black folks was coming to attack you, not physically but economically. You know, it was trying to keep black folks in their place. We're gonna talk about magazines. You know, obviously we know companies use ads to put a certain point of view into magazines and what we see on the internet, but at the time, it was the same thing. Companies were putting ads into magazines to just promote their point of view. I'm not going to be talking about white history much, but on the black side, I mean, we had Ebony magazine, 1945, was basically portraying black success. We had, in 1967, I don't know if you ever watched this movie, In the Heat of the Night, Sidney Poitier was a cop with this other cop, and they were visiting, I don't know, they were investigating someone, and they went to a greenhouse. And so this white man he's like talking out of his neck. And so the white man slaps Sidney Poitier. And then Sidney Poitier slaps the white man back. At the time, black folks couldn't touch the white people in films. Because, let's be real, they couldn't touch the white folks in films. But when Sidney Poitier slapped that man, it's like black folks were waking up. They were waking up at the time. Why couldn't I? And it wasn't scripted. He just slapped him, and the slap changed the whole idea of how we see black folks in film. So yeah, let's move to comics. So everyone knows King Kong, but the first portrayal of black people negatively was King Kong. You had this monkey coming from Africa. What does that sound like? Transatlantic slave trade. You had this monkey coming from Africa they had in shackles to put on display in New York City. At the time, New York City in 1933 was all the money movement. Everything was flowing through New York City. And at the time, an Empire State Building was built in 1930. The King Kong was made in 1933, and it was in theaters in 1933. That's 3 years from the tallest building and the richest building in the country. So they bring King Kong to New York to put him on display to show what America can do. And so when King Kong is tired of the bullshit, he breaks from the shackles. Who does he go for first? You think he goes to terrorizing the whole city. He goes for a white woman. He picks up a white woman outside of the building and climbs the Empire State Building. Remember, the building that's making the most money and producing the most money, and a white woman. What do you think these white folks do? They try to kill King Kong, which they successfully do, but it's trying to portray the idea that black folks need to stay in their place. Don't grab our white women and don't touch our money. Let's be real. Because guess what? We're going to shoot you down with airplanes and guns. What did you think was going to happen when you bring a 30-foot monkey to the bustling city of New York in shackles? He's going to get tired of the bullshit. But the thing about white women is that these black men nowadays only feel successful when they have a white woman, not a black woman, because they can do whatever they want to a white woman, as long as she has the money. And white women bring capital, and they can make more money with a white woman. They can struggle with a black woman, but when they get rich and successful, they can't with a black woman, because the black woman wants to be independent. She wants to do her own little thing. But the black man don't want that. He want a white woman. And the only thing to me, the only place where white people feel as where white people think black men as equal is in the bedroom. And I'm not going to get into that. You can just use your context clues. But is in the bedroom. You know? And so, let's move on. And this idea of trophy girl comes from King Kong. At the end of the movie, before they shoot him down, King Kong falls down to the ground, but the white woman survives. And then the end title will say, "Love killed him." Did love really kill him? But then they have this idea of everybody knows King Kong because they made 13 films over generation and generation and generation to let black people know that you need to stay in your place. And black folks eat King Kong up. We love us some King Kong. Because they're showing you what you do when you get to the top, we're going to shoot you back down. You get you a white girl and you get you some money, you need to stay in your place. You need to be with that black girl, and you need to be living off the street. That's a little exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So, we're going to talk about Caesar and the Planet of the Apes. Caesar is made in 2001, but it does so well that they make a sequel in, I think, the 2010s. But it kind of portrays this point of when Obama became president. Caesar is doing so well throughout the 2000s to the 2010s. Or Planet of the Apes, sorry. Barack Obama becomes president in 2008. What is Caesar? Caesar is a leader of this planet with apes in the jungle. What's Obama? He's the leader of America. You see the connection I'm making? He's the leader of America, and he's a black man, of course. He's the leader of these black folks. The black folks love Barack Obama. Monkeys love Caesar. I'm just making connections. But when Barack Obama first became president, Mitch McConnell, senator, says he wanted to make Barack Obama a one-term president, which was not successful. Another Planet of the Apes movies come out after Barack Obama wins the 2012 election. Bill O'Reilly, a political commentator at the time, says white America has gone away on Obama's second term. So I'm just making connections here. But I'm going to talk about one more thing about the nature of black women in politics. So President Ronald Reagan says he campaigns about he's going to admit the first woman, he's going to appoint the first woman to the Supreme Court. Whoop-de-doo, 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 whoop-de-woo. Everyone's so happy. They stopped television at the time in 1980 to show that the first woman has been appointed to the Supreme Court. Hooray. The woman, I believe her name was Sandra Day O'Connor. She's unanimously appointed to the Supreme Court. Unanimously. No one's rejecting her. There's no Senate, because you have to go to the Senate to be appointed to the Supreme Court. You got to take questioning from the Senate. No senator is asking her questions off the tailbone. No one's asking these crazy questions, and she's appointed. She flies by with flying colors. But Joe Biden says, "Oh, let's appoint the first black woman to the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson." The Senate absolutely derails her with questions, bombs her with questions. She barely passes. She barely gets passed. She only got passed by one vote. One vote. What's the difference from Sandra Day O'Connor and Ketanji Brown Jackson? Both overly qualified women in the same field, but two different skin colors. Don't tell me racism doesn't exist. or racial prejudice doesn't exist. It's in the pudding. It's in the pudding. They absolutely questioned Kadaji Brown Jackson to the last day, and she gets passed and appointed by one vote. So I'm just making connections here, and it's up to you how do you want to use them. I'm willing to talk to anybody about this. But that's all I had. So y'all be good. See you in the next video.